Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello and welcome to this episode of our show. This is your host, Keith Doherty. Today our special guest is real estate agent Kathleen Monroe of EVERGREEN Realty out of Irvine, California. Inspired by her father's success, Kathleen followed in her father's footsteps as a top-producing real estate professional. Starting out as Rookie of the Year to garnering accolades consistently in Orange Coast Magazine as a 5-star realtor. Less than 3% of the realtors in Orange County received this distinguished honor. Kathleen has also been featured on the cover of Top Agent Magazine in 2014 and 15, and per Kathleen's client, Nancy Brodsky, Kathleen has an upbeat personality, great sense of humor, and uncompromising knowledge of the real estate market. Kathleen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Keith. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah, we're honored to have you here today. And I guess if we could start out for our listeners, what led you into real estate? Which we kind of have an idea, obviously, from your intro, but give us a little more insight on kind of how that came to fruition and how your dad kind of guided you into that path.
Well, for many years, of course, growing up with my father having the most amazing work ethic and witnessing firsthand, the relationships he established and how he handled his clients in such a professional manner and really always went above and beyond to make sure that his clients were well taken care of. I could not have had a better mentor than my father. And witnessing that, of course, growing up, he said, you really should get into real estate, which, of course, most of the kids kind of sometimes take their own direction, which I did initially. I started as an entrepreneur and started my own business. Previously, as a model and an actress, I started a model and talent agency. It grew beyond my wildest expectations of over 500 models, actors. And then eventually, when my daughter came along, I sold it. I was a consultant for the business. And so at that point, my dad's like, okay, now's the time for you to get into real estate, because I had a non-compete contract with the business that I sold. So I thought, okay, perfect timing. And my daughter was old enough, for me to really get involved in real estate. And so when I got my license in July of 2005, I quickly realized I had clients standing in line, and I was still waiting for my license to come in the mail. And so fortunately for me, I had a nice sphere of influence, having been a native Californian, and understanding the principles of building a business and fostering relationships and being a shrewd negotiator, which I had developed from my first business, as well as understanding that being a master at creative and strategic marketing, because, it doesn't do any good if nobody knows you have a business and they can't do business with you. So for me, out the gate, I had clients standing by. My business took off. I was Rookie of the Year. And then I had told my first broker, I said, listen, I'm going to be a top producer. And she said, I don't doubt that, because my dad was scaling down at that point. And so within 2.5 years, I was the top producer of Century 21. And I recall my father and my mother being at the awards ceremony. And it was such a special occasion, because my dad was, and my mom, of course, and following in my dad's footsteps, he was so proud of me that, not only had I met but exceeded his expectations of being in real estate. And I took pride also in kind of carrying on his traditions of how he built his business, which really is client care and providing the highest level of extraordinary service for clients. And and I would always tell my dad, I always get all these hard transactions, and the kind that typically fall apart for most realtors. And he said, that's because you're tenacious and persistent. And because of that, he said, you always manage to keep it all together and close it successfully. And so it is interesting, through the course of my real estate career, my broker has even said, Kathleen, I can't even believe you always get these transactions of things and issues that I've never seen in 40 years. But ultimately, I think that being a good problem solver is key to my success as well, because I always figure out a way to fix it. Whatever the problem is, I fix it, And I think that my clients appreciate that because they see firsthand, because they've got a front row seat, that all these issues that can arise in a transaction, which many times are beyond anybody's realization or expectation, and then they see how I handle each one at a time, and then somehow, we finish, cross the finish line and, successfully close that transaction. So I do believe that for each and every client, I look at what their needs and desires and goals are, and I genuinely care about their best interest, whatever it might be. In some cases, I've loaned them money to get the house painted so that they can get top dollar. I do free staging because it enhances the value. I try to set myself apart with what I do and how I do it for my clients, so they clearly see that all realtors are not created equal, and that the level of service they get is uncompromising service, which the end result for them, if they're selling a house, is top dollar. And if they're a buyer, then they see that I go above and beyond, sometimes for homes that are overpriced by $100,000, and I help educate the seller through their agent who may have overpriced it, because they're not good at actually determining price on the house, or have listed it too high just to garner, the listing in the first place. And so, I always, when submitting an offer, it may appear as a lowball offer, but how it's packaged with a cover letter, with a detailed analysis of the value, and a little bit about my buyer, is I can usually get the seller to reevaluate and change their perception of the value of their own house, and, drop the price $100,000. And in turn, I can do the same thing on the listing side, is change buyers' perception of value, where they may come in low, and then I help them increase that perception of value so that my sellers get a higher price.
Yeah, I think you hit on a bunch of different attributes and traits too that we kind of look at, as you developed your success and different things that you've done. So maybe we can kind of just highlight those specifically for our listeners. What personal attributes or traits or qualities do you think have contributed to the success that you've had, and how do you think you developed these? It sounds like some of them you just molded after your dad, but other ones it sounds like you developed them as you grew as an agent.
Well, I think first and foremost, it's that realizing that, for each client has their own sets of needs. So for me, I love to analyze things. And so I analyze my clients, what their needs and goals are, because you may have someone who has a sense of urgency to sell the home. And so if they have a sense of urgency, then whatever their needs, goals, and desires are, I adopt those. So I implement a plan. I always tell my clients, and I'll ask them, hey, did you play sports? Sports fans. And of course, most of the time they have, and they'll say yes. And I said, okay, so when you played sports, you probably never went into a game without a game plan, right? And of course, they acknowledge yes. And I said, well, it's the same thing that I like to do in real estate, is that I played sports growing up. So my mind is kind of wired differently than maybe someone who hasn't, especially, not as many, when I grew up, not as many women were playing sports as they do today. But having two brothers, I think it gave me a strategic advantage to look at things differently. So when I go in, I analyze everything about the house. I analyze my clients, their motivation for selling, what their needs and desires are, what their personality type is like. Because if you're dealing with an engineer, then they're very detail-oriented, and they're all about the numbers, and they're going to read every word in the contract. So I have to adapt to my clients, who they are and how they are and what their needs are. So then that way, when I create a game plan for them specifically, for them personally, as well as what I'm going to do for their house, then the end result is exactly what they want. So I've either met and or exceeded their expectations. There was one instance where, here's a perfect example of a former client had referred me to an associate. He was a detective in a police department. He was going to be retiring. Well, he was whining and complaining at the office that he had interviewed 5 realtors. He didn't like any of them. And so she said, oh, by the way, you should contact my realtor. If she could put up with me, I'm sure she could put up with you. And because he was a tough cookie. So he called me up, and I met with him and his wife. And he clearly told me he had utilized 5 realtors in the past, hated them all, that, he never trusted them, and he pounded his hand on the table and said, what are you going to do if I want to fire you? And I assured him, I said, well, that's never happened, and you're not going to be the first. I said, just let me know what your goals and desires are, and I will make it happen. And so he told me, I want to close escrow. I want this house sold. I want to close by August 18th. And I want this amount of money. This is my bottom line. And I said, okay. I said, I'll make that happen. And I said, in the interim, I said, I will change your perception on realtors. And so I went to work. I staged the house for free, showcased it. I always do professional pictures to harness the power of the internet. And I create a website, a personal website for my clients. So that the address is 123mainstreet.com or whatever the address is. So I'm big on marketing. And when we got the offers in, we had a few hiccups, and we were able to overcome those. And when we opened escrow, everything was going along fine. And then, of course, towards the end, apparently he had a run-in with the homeowner association individual that drives around to see if there's anything wrong with your house. So, of course, they took it as an opportunity to flag it for something, trim the tree, paint the fascia. So the wife told me, she says, oh, Kathleen, she says, if he sees this, he's not going to want to sell the house now, just for spite because he doesn't like this person. I said, well, let's not tell him. I said, let me get my tree trimmer over there and trim the tree, and I'll pay the termite guy extra. I'll pay him to paint the fascia. I go, then we've solved the problem, because I could see her eyes were glazing over, and we're almost to the finish line. I wanted to make sure nothing got in the way of that. So we closed escrow. He had no idea what had transpired, and then he was thrilled that we actually closed on the day that he wanted to close. He got more money than he thought he would get, and he couldn't believe it. So I did, in fact, change his perception of realtors, so much so that when they were moving to Colorado and he got there, he realized quickly he didn't like any of the realtors there. So he called me up and he said, Kathleen, why are you not here in Colorado? We need you. And I said, well, I'm here in California, but I'll be your consultant. So I'm standing by. If you have any questions or concerns with any of your real estate transactions in Colorado, feel free to call me. So he was good with that, and I walked him through his contracts and everything else there. So he felt like he really had someone looking out for his best interest, which is really what clients want at the end of the day.
Did you end up telling him what you did to close the deal afterwards?
I think his wife did.
Yeah. Well, just be interesting to let him know that, you said you would go above and beyond and you would take care of it and you change his perception, and you did that, and you delivered on everything you promised. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
So kind of obviously you've been, I guess maybe, almost 11 years, or maybe you're coming up on 11 years in the industry, and I'm sure everything hasn't been just perfect, peaches and cream and all roses. So maybe what are some major adversities and trials that you've had to overcome to keep moving forward to achieve your goals?
Well, I think the biggest, challenges, I would say, was I'm certified as a short sale specialist. And I think that, the many challenges, in fact, many of the realtors, when, the real estate market turned upside down, and the height of the market being 2006 and 7 and 8, of course, 2008 was the beginning of the recession. And so when the market was shifting, I saw a lot of realtors exiting because suddenly houses didn't sell themselves anymore. So consequently, it took a lot of hard work. Well, I was never opposed to hard work. In fact, it's kind of how I grew up, is, the way our family was, and my father with the work ethic he had, it just was second nature to me. So consequently, I immediately went ahead and got my short sale certification because I thought, what are you going to do? Just help your clients in the good times and not help them, in the challenging times? You need to be there if you're truly committed to helping your clients and their real estate needs for whatever that might be, and not just because it's easy. So consequently, getting certified to do short sales, and in fact, in the very beginning of short sales, quickly saw that the banks weren't really set up. So, it was an uphill battle. You could work 2 to 3 years on a short sale, and it was very labor intensive. But because I am tenacious and persistent, in spite of all the red tape and all the, challenges that the banks had in the beginning, because they really weren't set up to be taking homes back. They were set up to do loans and move on. So consequently, it made it very challenging, not only for the homeowners, who certainly all wanted to keep their homes. And I think that, for me, was sad to see how many homeowners were losing their homes, some because they used their homes as an ATM machine, and others because they were just a victim of circumstances such as predatory lending. But on the downside of that, too, for some of my clients who truly, there's two in particular that I'm thinking about, that I was able to help them go against the banks, and one in particular to go against some unscrupulous realtors that were trying to steal their house, where I came in, swooped in. In fact, they call me Super Realtor. They were going to get me a little cape with an SR on it, because I swooped in and was able to save their homes. And, to this day, they call me their real estate angel, because they know without a shadow of a doubt that if I hadn't, basically been a whistleblower and gone up against, which is not easy to do, it's like, me and Goliath, and going up against that, and that's the conviction I got from my father, is that you fight for what's right. You just don't roll over. You don't walk away if something's not easy. You hang in there. You walk through the fire. You do whatever you have to do to help your clients. So it's not just about selling homes, and it's not just about helping buyers buy homes. It's really about, in this case, I was able to help people save their homes. And when your home is your haven, it's your sanctuary in the world. And there isn't anything more important than, for me, knowing that I was able to make a difference in those homeowners' lives, is to save their homes.
Yeah, I think that's pretty, like what you said, it's not always, and we've done quite a few interviews with different agents on the show, and I think one of the common themes is helping people, really, and I think what you do is really admirable, that you sit down and you're like, hey, what are your needs, what are your goals, what are your desires, and then you really try to formulate a plan to encompass all that, versus, hey, let me get this listing, let me get, so I can get a commission out of this. And I think sometimes that might be the perception of agents, that they're just like, hey, they're just, salespeople trying to sell something to get their commission. And I think that says a lot about you as a person and your character, that you really take the time to help people and get to know them and really facilitate what they want and they need.
Absolutely. Last year there was an instance where the homeowner wanted to hire this male realtor to list the house. They wanted to have me help them buy a house. Well, 18 months went by, and of course he didn't sell the house. It backed up to a busy street. Beautiful home, but backing up to a busy street, certainly deters a lot of prospective buyers. And of course, I always have a plan around, the location if there's an issue such as that. But of course, I sat quietly waiting, and then at the point 18 months later, I got the call, and I met with the homeowners to list the house because the other guy couldn't sell it, and now I would have the opportunity to help them list it and purchase another home. I found out that in that past 18 months, he had lost his job, and I asked him, I said, are you still in your severance package? And he said, no. He said, we're into our savings. So I thought, wow, there's a family with 4 children, 2 dogs, and, you know, he's past his severance. So they don't have any income whatsoever, and they're quickly going to, you know, lose this house, you know, if we don't do something. So one of the things about assessing their situation, which clearly was a sense of urgency, and this other guy couldn't sell it for 18 months, you know, and I certainly am not the type of realtor who comes in and just slashes the price. In fact, I do the opposite of that because I protect a client's bottom line. There's nothing more important than me looking at that as if it's my own bottom line. And so clients appreciate that. So what I did is I told them, I said, part of your yard, and they had a 14,000 square foot lot. I said, 1/2 of your yard is all like a green screen with beautiful plants that come up over the fence to where you can't actually see the cars driving by. I said, but the other half, you, from your beautiful master bedroom, you see all these cars driving by, dump trucks, this and that, because there's construction going on, you know, up the road. And I said, you know, out of sight, out of mind. I said, if you fill in that green screen, I said, you'll see that, you know, for buyers, they won't notice it as much. It won't bother them because they don't see it when they're inside the house. And so he filled it in. He did exactly what I said. And he told me, he said, I don't know why I didn't do that sooner. And he goes, it always bothered me when I would look out my master bedroom or bathroom and I would see the cars driving by. It would always bother me. And I said, well, if it bothers you, you can imagine it's going to bother a prospective buyer. And we were priced at, you know, 1.6, you know, 1.65 on the house. So, you know, it's a pretty big price point. And so he took care of that. And I told him, I said, listen, I said, we have to hit this out of the ballpark. And I said, I'm going to create a marketing plan specific to driving buyers and creating a buyer frenzy. And of course, this was in January. And of course, selling a home in January, people are just still, you know, getting over Christmas and the expense of that. So there's not a lot of buyers lined up to buy homes in January. So my whole marketing theme around this house to bring buyers in, which was, I did drone photos, which created the money shot. It was spectacular photos, which is what I, you know, pride myself on, is understanding that visually, if you create the visual desire so that when buyers see it, they fall in love with it, they can't resist not coming to the house to see it. So I created this whole ad campaign around, if your New Year's resolution is to find your dream home, well, here it is, with the money shot, with the, you know, the aerial shots and the interior shots, which I went in and staged it. It looks like a model home. And I said open house. I had a catered open house on Sunday, so everybody kind of had to wait a week. So I wanted to get everything built up, and so then I did 2 half-page ads in the LA Times, the Orange County paper, and you know, put it throughout the internet. And we had so many people there, exactly what I had hoped to do, created the buyer frenzy, and we got an offer from an attorney that night. You know, and other offers that came in, and they got exactly what they wanted price-wise, and we closed escrow in 30 days. So there's a perfect example of another realtor who had it for 18 months, couldn't sell it. I came in and assessed the fact that there's a sense of urgency here. Normally I'll roll out marketing, but in this case I had to like throw it all at the wall at once. But I did it strategically in a way to drive as many buyers as I could at once so they would all compete against each other. And the end result was nothing short of magical for my clients because they were absolutely thrilled. We got him out from under that house. And then eventually when he got another job, I was able to get him into another house. And so, you know, this is the kind of clients, it's not just the relationships, but it creates almost a fan club because they realize that, you know, I have a skill set that is above and beyond what a lot of average realtors will do for their clients because I don't have a problem spending the money in, you know, full-on advertising to really showcase their house and get the word out there for my clients to make sure that, that we accomplish their real estate goals and get them top dollar.
Yeah, well, that's like I said, we've interviewed a lot of other agents. I've never heard of a campaign quite that creative and innovative that do that. But it totally makes sense. Like you said, you're bringing out the competition amongst the buyers. It's the old, like an auction type thing. Like as soon as people see something that somebody else wants, all of a sudden they want it. It just, it creates that frenzy. So that's pretty cool the way you orchestrated that whole entire thing.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. And I think at the end of the day, because when you're at the helm, for me as a realtor, and I realize it's like, their ship is sinking, and I'm responsible to make sure it doesn't sink, and that, I get them to safe harbor and make sure that, we get them out of a difficult situation so that they didn't lose the equity that they had in the house because they would have been in a position they could only hold on for so long, in making those payments.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of looking forward a little bit, what is your vision? Where do you see things going in your, building your business, say, over the next 5 years?
Well, ideally, I feel like, the next step, my dad was a real estate broker, and I've just been so busy, selling real estate, which I feel so grateful that I think because I've genuinely put my client's best interest at heart, and I don't even ever worry about a commission check. So I don't even focus on that, and the abundance just comes, and so consequently, the next step would be to get my broker's license, which I'm working on right now, and eventually open up my own realty company, and to continue to do what I do. I do love mentoring agents. I would really like to be able to continue to help other agents understand the fundamentals of really how to be successful in real estate. And it's not how much you sell that is important at the end of the day. It's really how well you do what you do. And when you go above and beyond and provide the highest level of extraordinary service to where you pull out all the stops for any client, whatever that might be, to make things happen for them, then, it's like anybody would have a successful career and, understand the importance of fostering those relationships and valuing those relationships and taking great care of those clients.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you said there kind of tails into where we're kind of moving here next, but obviously based upon the performance and based upon the way that you really take care of your clients' needs, you probably, and you even mentioned you get referrals and people recommend you and people tell people about you. But other than that, what do you feel the best way that you market yourself, so that you can continue to grow as a real estate professional?
Well, what's interesting is that when you create a great reputation and a following, it kind of feeds itself. And, I also find that with the accolades I receive, each year in, Orange Coast Magazine, is that, it continues to perpetuate, the reputation that I've established, how I've set myself apart, how my philosophy on real estate is set apart from my competition. And it's like, it doesn't cost, a homeowner or a prospective buyer, it doesn't cost them anything. It doesn't cost them any more to really have the best real estate professional in Orange County. I was recently asked to be, I guess, speaker at the Chapman University in the city of Orange, and they asked me to speak on, home buyers avoiding costly mistakes. And, my 2 sessions I had were packed, just packed, standing room only. And, nobody wants to make mistakes in life, and certainly not costly ones. When it comes to real estate, you're in jeopardy of making some seriously costly mistakes. And I told them, first and foremost is that, the realtor you choose is so important, and all realtors are not created equal. And if you're not interviewing several realtors to find out, I said, nobody even asks these realtors if they're good negotiators. And it's such an integral part of what a realtor does. I said, if you're a buyer and you're trying to get a house and you've got a realtor who's not a good negotiator, how many homes are you going to lose out on before you actually get one? And at that point, it's probably not your top choice. And one lady raised her hand. She said, yeah, my realtor, we submitted 10 different offers on 10 different houses. I didn't get any of them. And I said, well, there's a perfect example for you. It's kind of frustrating because, again, if that realtor isn't savvy enough to understand how to negotiate and how to get an offer accepted and how to set your offer apart from the other offers that are on the table, then, they're going to have a hard time getting a house. And I talked also about home inspectors. In the state of California, you don't have to be licensed to be a home inspector. And that's a problem in and of itself. And I said, so for my clients, the condition of a home affects the value. So if there's something wrong with the condition, you can bet that we're going to renegotiate the value of that home or ask for credit. And you can't do that if you don't have a good inspector to really undermine the house and what's wrong with the house, to where you can then bring that to their attention and renegotiate it. So with that, I told them my home inspector is a general contractor. He's also licensed to do mold inspections. So he also is licensed for pool and spa inspections. So he's like 3-in-1. And I said, nobody knows a house better than him because he's built homes before. You don't want to get someone who just has a certification that they spent $250 for to inspect homes and get a matching hat and shirt, and here's your software. And a lady raised her hand and she said, yeah. She said, my realtor had one of those, and the lady came to do the inspection. She said, yeah, I'm a bartender, but I just got my certification. I paid $250 for it, so now I'm doing home inspections. And I said, well, that's kind of scary if she's a bartender. She just got her certification for home inspections. I said, I'd probably rather have that lady making me a martini versus inspecting a home. So, helping those individuals that attended my class that, you have to do your due diligence to find a top-notch realtor, and nothing less, should even be accepted. And then usually that person will have a top-notch home inspector to protect, your potential investment when you purchase that house.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you kind of touched upon this a little bit, kind of as we went through things here. But what do you think the biggest misconception or myth people have about working with a real estate agent is?
Well, I think the biggest misconception is I don't think they realize, and this is if you narrow it down and get somebody who's really, really good at what they do, I don't think they understand all of what realtors do, and it's kind of like there was a cartoon character, Felix the cat. He had a bag, his little bag of tricks, so to speak. And with that, you got a lot. You need to have a lot going on in your bag of tricks there, because if you're going to be able to do problem solving and really understand the market, understand the value of a home, not only pricing it for a client, pricing it appropriately, and pricing a home is an art. Not everybody knows how to price it. They price it too high. Certainly, if it's too low, that's not good for the client. And then if you're on representing the buyer, is helping them understand. The biggest thing that I find is that is managing a client's expectations and their emotions, and helping them change their perception as necessary. If they're fixated on something small, help them see the big picture of a home they're purchasing, and or if a seller's selling the home, help them see the big picture and change their perception of value if they're attached to a price because a home up the street sold for $100,000 more. Well, it's like, yeah, and that house had a pool and it was highly upgraded and yours isn't, And so a lot of times it's really just educating the client. So I believe that the only way that people can make informed decisions is if they have the information.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of a hypothetical situation, and you actually kind of dealt with it with the detective you mentioned earlier. So let's say you get that, and I think you kind of already answered this, but we'll kind of recap it for our listeners. So you get that call. So let's say that detective calls you up and says, "Hey, we're sick of Colorado now. I'm going somewhere else." It's maybe they just decided they didn't want to do that. So what advice would you give them, to select an agent who can serve their needs, kind of like, you do for your people? What kind of things would you tell them to look for?
Well, I think the most important things to look for in a realtor is, creating a list of questions, thinking about interviewing them. And the questions on that interview list should be first and foremost, how long have you been selling real estate? What sets you apart as the real estate professional from your competition? Share with me some incidences. And depending upon if somebody's on the buyer side, if they're interviewing, a realtor as a buyer, then the question would be, share with me some stories, past stories of client success where you felt that your negotiating skills helped your buyer get the house over somebody else. What are some of your strategic plans that you do to get my offer accepted over other people's offers? Tell me about your home inspector. What are their qualifications? Are they a general contractor? Are they licensed to do mold? Will they test for mold when they're there? Are they experienced at, inspecting a pool or a spa if there's a pool or a spa there? These are some of the questions that you can ask someone to have a better understanding about what their skill set is. It's different questions if you're a prospective seller, because then the questions that you would be asking, which the first questions would be the same, of course, how long have you been in real estate? And, tell me about some of your recent sales and how close was the sales price to the list price. Will you create a marketing plan for me? That's very specific in detail as to what you will be doing to market my home and advertise my home. What's your budget for that? And that's the thing, too, is that sometimes as people want to negotiate the commissions, what they forget about is that if somebody can't even negotiate their commissions and they want to just give it away, do it for the lowest amount possible, I think what the prospective seller is missing is that if they can't even negotiate their commissions with you and protect that, how are they going to negotiate, for the sale of your house and get you top dollar? They're going to be more interested in selling it quickly and dropping the price. And the reduction in price, typically that those types of realtors do, which is to just stick a sign in the yard and sell it quickly so they can move on to the next one, because they're not as concerned about the client's bottom line. They're more concerned about their commission check. And so consequently, that's not a good scenario. But more importantly for a prospective seller is understanding that in negotiating, if you have someone who's a shrewd negotiator, then they can change the perception of value to the buyer so that the buyer is willing to pay more money for that house. And that's worth its weight in gold. And so then you end up getting top dollar for your house. And any reduction in commission would still have been, such a minor aspect in relationship to what you garner financially by having a really skilled negotiator as a listing agent and having them share those stories with you so you see firsthand, what did they do? Do they stage the home? Do they use a professional photographer? I mean, it's kind of scary today that, with everything online, and all the buyers are very savvy because all the information's online about the homes, the competition. Zillow has their values on there, which aren't necessarily always accurate, but nonetheless, people might use that as a gauge. And, for realtors who are using their camera on their phone to take pictures, it's like, and then they want a big commission, for me, that just is not professional. And it's like every client selling their home deserves to have professional photos of their house showcasing it online, because if somebody's looking at pictures and the pictures are kind of, shadows, dark, you can't really tell what the room looks like or any defined features on it, makes a big difference. I had a situation recently where someone fired their realtor for reasons that they were completely uncomfortable with how the transaction was being handled, the listing, and was on the market for 45 days. I have a client across the street who loves and adores me and told her, oh, you need to call Kathleen. She'll help you. So she canceled that contract, and I looked at the pictures from the other realtor, and I thought, wow, the pictures weren't very good, and, for each room, I'll go room by room and showcase that room. If there's too much furniture in the room, we'll just move it out. So I came through and I suggested that after 45 days on the market, and I said, and he said, it's listed at $729, and he kept telling her, let's drop the price to $699. We need to do a quick sale. And she's thinking, I don't need to do a quick sale. He just wants a commission. So, that's kind of upsetting, and she's an elderly client. And so when I met with her, I said, we don't need to drop the price. We just need to rearrange some furniture in here. I'll come in and stage. I said, I would suggest painting your kitchen cabinets white. It was a very dark brown, but the home was built in 1960, so those were original cabinets. I said, they'll look a lot nicer and newer and more modern if you paint them white, which white cabinets now, there's the comeback. Everybody loves white cabinets now. And so she did exactly that. She painted the white cabinets, and she called me. She says, Kathleen, I absolutely love my new kitchen. She goes, it feels brand new. And I said, exactly. So went in, took professional photos. It looked like a different house. You wouldn't even have known it was the same house. Here's a house sat on the market for 45 days, and she had already bought a house also in Colorado. It was a different client also moving to Colorado. And so she had a sense of urgency because now she had two houses. And so within 1 week, less than a week, actually, we got the first offer. And then the second offer came in on the heels of that one. And it was actually someone who used to live in California, had moved to Texas and didn't like Texas, wanted to come back to Texas or to California. And they saw the photos, fell in love with it, kind of reminded of the house that they had sold. And they came in at a full price offer. So if she had stuck with the other agent who was wanting to quickly drop the price from $729 to $699, that's a substantial money out of that poor seller's pocket, and she's retired, so every penny matters to her. And she had lost her husband, and I came in, made a few changes, and she painted the kitchen cabinets, which made all the difference in the world, and she got exactly what she was asking for, $729. So she was calling me her, guardian angel, and she's like, I'm just over the moon with you, Kathleen. It's like I couldn't be happier, because the end result for her, it's in escrow now, and we'll be closing soon, and she'll be able to move to Colorado, and she's had a great experience.
Yeah, that's a great story. So if somebody's in the Orange County area, if they're in California and they're looking for your services, what's the easiest way somebody can find out more information about with you and how you can help them?
Well, they can go to my website at www.gowithmonroe.com. So that's G-O with W-I-T-H Monroe, MONROE.com, or call me at 949-702-1955.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Kathleen. I certainly appreciate your time, taking time out of your schedule and coming and sharing all your knowledge and business experience and everything you've been through with our listeners here today. And you guys, if you want to learn more about Kathleen, we're going to have links below the interview. We'll have a link to her website. We have her number, and any other contact information will be down there. So with that said, Kathleen, thank you so much for taking time and coming here to speak with us today.
It's my pleasure, Keith. Thank you for having me on today. I really appreciate it, and wishing success to all those out there in finding the perfect realtor. Don't forget to do your due diligence. You'll thank yourself later.
Excellent. All right, everybody, until our next show, have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.